Okay, let us move on now into the fourth tetrad, because it's at this point that we come to the development of insight. And this tetrad begins with, I shall breathe in contemplating impermanence. He trains thus, I shall breathe out contemplating impermanence. Okay, now the sort of key question, of course different teachers have different methods, but how does one make the transition, assuming the first three major sections are concerned with concentrating the mind? How does one make the transition in mindfulness of breathing from the mode of serenity or tranquility or concentration to the mode of insight? Okay, the way that I learned from my teacher in Sri Lanka is to move to the development of insight. One starts off by making a clear distinction between in-breath and out-breath. So it's not just that the distinction of in-breath and out-breath is sort of in the back of the mind as one is focusing upon the sensation of the breath, but rather one is clearly discerning the difference between in-breath and out-breath, in-breath and out-breath. Because at the time one is breathing in, the previous out-breath is gone. The in-breath comes to an end, one sees the in-breath has come to an end, then it's replaced by the out-breath, and then the out-breath comes to an end. And so one is distinguishing ending of in-breath, ending of out-breath, ending of in-breath, ending of out-breath. Okay, then after one is able to clearly distinguish over some time the difference between in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath, and the ending of in-breath, ending of out-breath, then one divides the in-breath into the three phases: initial phase, middle phase, end phase. And then the out-breath, initial phase, middle phase, initial phase, middle phase, end phase. And with the in-breath, one sees the initial phase comes to an end, replaced by the middle phase. Middle phase comes to an end, replaced by the end phase. End phase of the in-breath comes to an end, replaced by the initial phase of the out-breath, then middle phase of the out-breath, end phase of the out-breath. And then one continues this for some time. And so now one is able to see the impermanence, even within one in-breath, of each phase of the in-breath. And within the out-breath, one sees the impermanence of each of the three phases within the out-breath. Okay, now when the mind becomes well focused upon this distinction, one could start focusing upon how within the in-breath, or how an in-breath is constituted, even though it appears superficially to be continuous, but there are actually a whole succession of little movements, little jerky movements within an in-breath, and a whole succession of little jerky movements without an out-breath. So one is starting to see how, well, to use an analogy, it's like if one is watching a movie, it seems to be the cowboy is riding off into the sunset on his horse, and it looks like he's just moving continuously closer and closer to the horizon. But if you take the strip of the film and you look, and it's like one little frame of the film, the cowboy and the horse is here, the next frame he's there, Or even if you're watching the film, if the projector is turned into really slow motion, you start to see the individual frames. And so you see how each frame is discrete. And so now one is seeing how each in-breath is made up of a whole succession of little frames of breathing in, and how the out-breath is made up of a succession of little frames of breathing out, 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 out. And so each of these, one could see, is distinct, and each one, as the mind becomes more sort of refined in its focus, each one has an arising and a cessation. So now one is contemplating impermanence through the in-breath and out-breath, and then one learns to be able to extend that awareness to embrace all, from the breath to all 5 aggregates. So one could extend it, so one is, while breathing in and out, one is observing how the body itself is a succession, or it's a constant flux, a succession of physical events always arising and passing away. And how what we call the mind is also a succession of events, feelings, perceptions, volitions, consciousness arising and passing away. So now one is observing the arising and passing away of the 5 aggregates in connection with the in and out breathing. So this becomes contemplating impermanence while breathing in, while breathing out. Okay, now comes the second step here, which is, I shall breathe in, contemplating fading away. I shall breathe out, contemplating fading away. Now this is a rather tricky phrase. Let me just I'll clear these, we don't need these anymore. Yeah, the second one, I say it's a little bit tricky because the expression here is virag anupasi. Okay, now the suffix here, anupasi, is what's translated as contemplating, or it could be rendered observing. It's based on the root or the verb pasati, which means to see, with the prefix anu, which suggests closely. So it's closely seeing. And the first, which we just discussed, is aniccanupasi, contemplating impermanence. Now the second one, viraganupasi, the reason it's tricky is because of the word viraga. Now the word viraga, in most contexts, means the absence of raga. And what is raga? You might know about the Indian musical compositions, which are called ragas. If you've heard like Ravi Shankar or Ali Akbar Khan, you know, the musical compositions are called ragas. The word raga originally had the sense of color. especially a color obtained by dyeing cloth. And so the musical compositions are called ragas because each one is based on a scale which is supposed to convey a very specific mood which is connected to a particular season of the year, a particular time of day. So there are morning ragas, afternoon ragas, evening ragas, and it's said that in the classical period, if a really master Indian musician started to play a morning raga in the evening, the sun would reverse course, the birds would start chirping. Okay, so raga originally has the sense of a color, especially a color obtained by dyeing. And then within the spiritual philosophies of India, it takes on the meaning of passion or lust, because passion is what sort of suffuses the mind the way dye will suffuse a cloth. And so the ideal for the Indian spiritual systems, not only Buddhism, but also the yoga systems, the Vedantic systems, is viraga, which means dispassion, the overcoming of the passions, the attachments. And so within most places in the Buddha's texts where the Buddha speaks about viraga, he means dispassion or detachment, the ending of attachment. And so even sometimes nibbana is equated with viraga. You know, it's the extinction of craving, and viraga, virago tanha kayo nirodo nibbana. So it's the extinction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. But when a cloth is dyed and then it's washed over time, what happens is that the color fades out from the cloth. So the cloth loses its color. So another meaning of viraga is fading out, fading away. And so within some contexts, it takes on the meaning, it's a kind of extended meaning of impermanence. And so sometimes in the Ānāpānasati Sutta or in other places in the Buddhist suttas concerned with contemplation, this phrase viraganupassi could be translated contemplation of dispassion. It's not exactly correct here, but we have to recognize the way meanings of words sometimes, let's say when one word has multiple meanings, in a particular context, even though one of those meanings is intended, but the other nuances will also sort of overlap and reverberate through it. And so I think that is taking place here, though the prominent meaning of contemplating viraga is contemplating the fading away of phenomena, but sort of what is giving a particular color, a particular echo to that expression is in the background is the sense of growing dispassion, increasing dispassion. And so the way I would understand the distinction between contemplating impermanence and contemplating fading away, actually the fading away that's taking place here is not a slow and gradual fading away, but rather this is a focus upon the aspect of passing away of things. Like in contemplating impermanence, one is observing the very rapid arising and passing away, arising and passing away, or the persistence and passing away, persistence and passing away. But as the focus of the mind becomes sharper, more persistent, more precise, what happens is that the awareness of arising and persistence falls into the background, and what stands out as prominent is the passing away. So that with the in-breath, it seems that each little, what I call the jerk of the breath, is just experienced as a succession of events of vanishing, 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 vanishing. The out-breath, each little jerk of the out-breath is experienced as a succession of vanishing, 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 vanishing. And then when it's extended to all of the 5 aggregates, then one is experiencing everything within the mind-body compound as just breaking up and passing away, breaking up and passing away. So it becomes a process of continuous dissolution, dissolving, and passing away. And then that leads into the Nirodhanupassi, which is the contemplation of cessation. And the way I understand the distinction between this and contemplation of fading away is that in Nirodhanupassi, contemplating cessation, what stands out is the fact that whatever existed at the previous moment is no longer there. So that with Viraghanupassi, one is seeing, for example, the body, all the physical processes in the body are just breaking up and vanishing, breaking and vanishing, breaking and vanishing. With Nirodhanupassi, one is cognizant or aware that that bodily process is gone, that process is gone, that one is gone, that one is gone. That has ceased, this has ceased, this has ceased. So everything is constantly ceasing and gone, gone, gone. So this gives that really distinctive sense that nothing has any stability, any persistence, but everything is just breaking up and vanishing and gone, disappeared. And then that leads into the 4th stage of contemplation, which is contemplation of relinquishment. And this can be understood as simply relinquishing, because one is seeing that everything within the 5 aggregates is constantly just breaking up and passing away. There comes the relinquishing of any grasping or clinging to anything within the 5 aggregates. And so whatever arises in the mind, one just lets it go, lets it go, lets it go. Whatever is experienced within form, feeling, perception, mental activities, consciousness, because one is observing it's breaking up and passing away, one is just lets it go, lets it go, lets it go. And so this is contemplation of relinquishment. And so these are the 4 tetrads concerned with insight. And so then the Buddha sort of sums up and says, this is how mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and great benefit.